So I want to go through the rest of the pages 194 to 195 assignment. I already went through 3, 6, and 18 in my other video. I just want to discuss the rest of these real quick. So the first problem is number 1. So number 1 says, compare equilateral and isosceles triangles. All right, so number 1, do this over here. Equilateral triangles. Equilateral triangles. I'm going to use some shorthand. Triangles must have 3 congruent sides. So all 3 sides have to be the same measure, the same distance. Equal triangles must have 3 congruent sides, but isosceles triangles must have at least 2 congruent sides. So to be isosceles, you need at least 2 congruent sides. To be equilateral, all 3 have to be congruent. So every equilateral triangle is a type of isosceles triangle, but not every isosceles triangle is equilateral because you only need 2 sides to be congruent to be isosceles. You could have all 3, but you only need 2. All right, let's look at, because we did 3 already, let's go to number 4. All right, so number 4, here is the picture of number 4. It says describe or classify the triangle in as many ways as possible. So as you see here, we've got all acute angles. So this is an acute triangle. I'm just going to list all these out and I'm writing them over here. I have an acute triangle. What else do we have here? We don't have any 90-degree angles, so it's not a right triangle. All of these are different. All the angles are different, which tells me that the side lengths across from the angles must also be different. So all of the side lengths, all of the angle measures are different, so it is also scalene. So I'm going to write down scalene. And that is it for that one. So let's go to number 5. So on number 5, here's the picture of the triangle. And this one, we have those 2 tick marks showing that those side lengths are congruent. The 2 angles across from them are also congruent. So if at least 2 sides are congruent, which in this one we only have 2 sides that are congruent because there's no tick mark here and because that angle measure is different than the other 2. We have 2 side lengths that are the same, that are congruent. So we have an isosceles triangle. So number 5, I'm going to write isosceles. Now, in number 5, we also have an obtuse angle, so this is an obtuse triangle, so an isosceles obtuse triangle. All right, let's go on to number 6. Number 6, oh, just kidding, I did number 6 already, so let's go on to 7. So number 6 I did in my last video, there it is. Number 7, it says, find the value of x. So again, all of the angles inside of a triangle must add to 180 degrees. So I'm going to write down 73 plus 13 plus x must equal 180 degrees. All right, so if I add these together, I'm adding my like terms together. I'm going to get 86. I need to solve for x, so I need to subtract 86 from both sides of the equation. And I get x is equal to 94. Then the other part of the question says I need to classify this in as many ways as possible. Well, if I know that this is 94, x is 94 degrees, 94 is bigger than 90, so this is an obtuse angle, so I have an obtuse triangle. So I'm going to write down obtuse. All right. If this is 94 and this is 73 and that's 13, they're all different. So that tells me it's also scalene. So an obtuse scalene triangle. Going on to number 8. Here is the triangle for number 8. Again, we have those 2 tick marks which indicate that this is an isosceles triangle. So I'm going to write that down. Isosceles triangle. And then also, if I find the measure of angle x here, well, or the measure of this angle, which is x degrees, the sides opposite of the congruent, excuse me, let me say that again, the angles opposite of the congruent sides, the angles opposite of the congruent sides are also congruent. The angles opposite the congruent sides, these angles, are also congruent. So this must be 48 because these sides are the same, so the angles across from them are the same. So if this is 48, that one's got to be 48 as well. So x is 48 degrees. And if this is 48, 48, and 84, those are all acute angles, so this is also an acute triangle. So an isosceles acute triangle. All right, number 9. On number 9, again, I've got that isosceles triangle. So the side or the angle measures across from the congruent sides must be congruent. I don't know what either one of these is though. So I'm going to set up an equation for this one. I do know that this one is 45. So 45 plus x must equal 180 because again, all of the angles in a triangle always add up to 180. So 45 plus x must equal 180. And I need to solve that equation and find the measure of angle of the angle that's measured as x. So I'm going to combine my like terms. I have two x's here, so I'm going to say 2x. I will subtract off the 45 to move it to the other side. So I get 2x is 135, and divide both sides by 2. So let's see, 135 divided by 2, 120 divided by 2 is 60, so that must be 60, and 7.5 is 67.5. Little mental math. 67.5, that is x. All right, so now I need to classify this in as many ways as possible. If I know that x is 67.5 degrees, they're both 67.5. This is 45. Those are all acute angles, so this is an acute triangle, since all three angles are acute. And, as I mentioned before, because these two side lengths are congruent, I have an isosceles triangle. So it's, again, isosceles and acute, just like the last one. All right, go on to number 10. Number 10, let me try to keep this organized. I'll break my page in half. Okay, number 10. All right, so on this one we have 3 tick marks. That tells me that this is an equiangular triangle, Oh, I'm sorry, let me back up. This is an equilateral triangle because the side lengths are congruent, which implies that the angles across from those congruent sides must be congruent. So if it's equilateral because the side lengths are congruent, then the angle measures across from those side lengths must also be congruent. So all of those angle measures must be the same thing because all the side lengths are congruent. So if this one is 60, then the one across from here must be 60, and the one across from there must be 60. So this one, you don't have to do any work. You can just say, okay, x has to be 60. And then sure enough, 60 plus 60 plus 60 is 180. We know this should add up to 180. So there's a little shortcut of number 10. So again, for number 10, x must equal 60 degrees. And then because all the side lengths are the same measure, we're going to say that it is equiangular and equilateral. I keep saying that because equilateral implies equiangular and equiangular implies equilateral, so it goes both ways. So because all the side lengths are congruent, so this is for congruent sides, 3 congruent sides, it is equilateral. Equiangular is implied, equiangular is implied if it's equilateral, but equiangular means that there are 3 congruent angles. So again, if the side lengths are congruent, the angles across from them are congruent. So if all 3 sides are congruent, all 3 angles must also be congruent. So equilateral and equiangular, they're both going to occur. If it's equilateral, it implies that it's equiangular and vice versa. All right, anything else? Well, if these are all 60, they're all less than 90, so that means it's also acute. So this is an equilateral, equiangular, acute triangle. And that's number 10. All right, the last one here in this section is number 11 in the section of problems. So again, we have an isosceles triangle. Those 2 side lengths are congruent, so the angles across from them must be congruent. So on this one, I'm going to do just like I did on problem number 9. I'm going to set up an equation where I add up all these angles and they should equal 180. So 132 plus x must equal 180. So number 11. 132 plus x must equal 180. So 132 plus 2x must equal 180. Subtract off the 132 from both sides of the equation. So 2x equals 180 minus 32 is 48, and divide by 2, so x is 24. All right, now we need to classify this. So again, these two side lengths are congruent, so it is isosceles, and then we have an angle here that's larger than 90, so it's also obtuse. So it's an obtuse isosceles triangle. So number 11 is an obtuse isosceles triangle. There we go. All right, the other problems we had to do, 12 and 13, I did, oh, I thought I did 13. I didn't yet. So I have to do 12 and 13. I did number 18 part A already. So here's the answer for 18 part A, or the three answers. It's a three-part question. And then I have to do 19 and 24 yet. All right, so 12, 13, 19, 24. Okay, so number 12. On number 12, it says, describe and correct the error in classifying the triangle. Well, this person says the triangle is an acute triangle because it has acute angles. Well, sure, it has some acute angles, but an acute triangle must have all three acute angles. This one has an obtuse angle. It's greater than 90 degrees. So this is actually an obtuse triangle. So I'm going to say for number 12, the triangle is not... Oh, great. I just threw my headphones away. That's not good. All right. The triangle is an obtuse triangle, since one angle is obtuse. An acute triangle would require all three angles to be acute. All right, there we go. Let's go on to number 13. On number 13, it says we've got this mosaic tile. So we're looking at this yellow piece up here, cut out from one of these tiles. It says find the value of x and then classify the triangle used in the mosaic in two ways. All right, so find the value of x. So again, we're doing just what we did up on these problems for 6 through 11 with this one here. So we've got an isosceles triangle. These two side lengths are congruent, so the angles across from them are congruent. We know that this one is 40. So I'm going to say 40 plus x must equal 180, because again, the angles in a triangle all add up to 180. So I'm going to write down here 40 plus x must equal 180. I'll combine my like terms. The two x's make a 2x. Subtract off the 40 from both sides of the equation. So 2x is 140. Divide by 2 on both sides of the equation, and I get x equals 70. So there I solved for x. And then I need to classify this in as many ways as possible. Well, I already said it's... Sorry, my son just pounded on my bedroom door here. All right, so let's move on. Anyway, so I've got x being 70 degrees. So these are both 70s. So all three of the angles are less than 90 degrees. So this is an acute triangle. And then again, these two side lengths are the same measure, so it's also isosceles. So this one for number 13 is an acute isosceles triangle. All right, then I have numbers 19 and 24 to go. So number 19. So in number 19, it's asking us to explain why all triangles have at least two acute angles. So think about a triangle. Its interior angle sum must be 180 degrees. So if we have two angles that are, let's say, not acute, well, the smallest angle that you can make that is not acute is a right angle, a 90-degree angle. So if I have a 90-degree angle here, and then I try to make another right angle, another 90-degree angle here, is it possible to make a triangle out of that? Obviously not. So I've got my three sides, they don't connect at their endpoints. That's not a triangle. So let's try to explain this idea the other one, so this is if they're both right angles. Let's say if I had an obtuse angle, so more than 90 degrees, and then another obtuse angle. Well, again, not a triangle. So we need to try to explain that in words to answer number 19. Again, we're looking for why all triangles have at least two acute angles. All right, so if two angles of a triangle were greater than or equal to 90 degrees, then the sum of those angles, I'm going to use abbreviation again, it's angles, and the sum of those angles would be greater than or equal to, 180 degrees. But now I need another third angle to make my triangle, so adding in another angle, I'm using an angle symbol, adding in another angle in the triangle would make the sum greater than 180 degrees. This is impossible. All right, so it's really what's called a proof by counterexample. There's no way to have a third angle added into this 180 degrees because now you're over 180, and we know that all of these triangles need an interior angle sum of 180 degrees exactly. So let me just read this again. It says if two angles of a triangle were greater than or equal to 90 degrees, like I have here or here, then the sum of those angles would be greater than or equal to 180 degrees. Here they're equal to 180 when you add them. Here they're greater than 180 when you add them. Adding in some other angle in the triangle would make the sum greater than 180, and this is impossible. So that last part doesn't exactly go with my diagrams here. It goes more back to this idea. So it's like you have a triangle, and let's just say for argument's sake, this is 90 and this is 90. I know it doesn't look like it, but then they'd already add up to 180. There's no way to make another angle here because you've already used up all of your degrees in those two angles, and they have to all add up to 180. So that's my explanation for number 19. All right, the last one here was the word problem, number 24. It says you have $10 for text messages and each message costs 25 cents. Well, right there, hey, each message is 25 cents. That means 25 cents per message. And it says you've got $10. So you've got $10, you're going to lose 25 cents every message. Remember, if you have that word per, or in this case it says each message, which means 25 cents per message, we're going to need to put a variable next to that. So that's 0.25x because it keeps happening. So we start with 10, we keep losing 25 cents per message, so 0.25x. We start with 10, we lose 0.25x. Which one of these has a positive 10 and then you lose 0.25x? Well, that's going to be A, because you have a positive 10 and you're losing the money here, so that's a negative 0.25x. So part A, answer A is the correct answer. Part B, answer B here would be if you gain 25 cents per message. Sorry if you hear my son in the background screaming for his mom, aka my wife. All right, here we go. Part B, again, it says we're losing $10 right away, but we have positive $10, so that doesn't make sense. Part C says you, again, are losing $10 and then you're losing 25 cents per message, so that doesn't make sense. And then part D, it says you have a positive $10, so that's good, but then it says you're gaining 25 cents because it's a positive. You're gaining 25 cents per message. You don't make money for texting. That'd be great, but you don't. So it's got to be answer A. All right, so number 24, the answer is letter A. And that's it. Have a good day.